All right, welcome. Really glad to have you on this webinar. My name's Tom Kornblue.
And my name is Tom Stein.
This is how to invest in Bitcoin, ride the great coming wave. We've got a lot to share with you today. We're very excited about this, and we've put a lot of time and thought into it. We know you're going to get enormous value from this. In the last year, the value of Bitcoin has increased 1,200%. That means a $1,000 investment a year ago is now worth $12,000.
That is incredible, Tom. Just incredible.
Right. It's an amazing thing. Most people, when they see this, they think, my God, it's too late. I missed the boat. Bitcoin has already left without me. We're here to say that's not the case. In fact, this is a great time to make an investment in Bitcoin. It's not for everybody, but if you're the right kind of person, we think it could be a great opportunity. And
absolutely.
And that's what this webinar is about. The truth is that any kind of a life-changing investment, and we believe that Bitcoin has the potential to be that, any kind of investment that has that potential is going to be risky. Bitcoin is no exception.
Yeah, and matter of fact, any investment is going to be risky. So life-changing or not, that's the nature of all investment.
Yep. Bitcoin has an enormous reward to risk ratio, and we're going to talk about that and how you can invest in Bitcoin and take advantage of that. However, to say it again, we know this kind of investment is not for everyone, and we're going to give you enough information today on this webinar in a very structured way so you can make a good decision about, are you that person? Are you the right kind of person to invest in this kind of speculation?
Yes.
So over the course of this webinar, we're going to accomplish three things. One, we want to give you enough information so that you have evidence, and you can see the same evidence that we see, that there's a great wave coming and why Bitcoin is potentially an outstanding investment.
And the second thing we're going to give you is some information about how much. What is the potential value? Where is Bitcoin headed? What kind of price could we expect to see at some point, at various points in the future? And we're also going to give you a sense of how to maximize your potential gain from that. And then number three, we're going to teach you even more than that. We're going to teach you how to do it. We're just going to give you some proven strategies that will help you to have a solid investment plan so that when you're invested in Bitcoin, you know when to be in, when to be out, and do it in a way that will maximize your potential return, because that's often the big failing in most investments. You're told how to get in, but nobody tells you what to do once you're in. It's very essential to do that. Very, very essential.
Most people who make these kind of speculative investments actually end up losing money. We're going to show you how not to do that. Also, before the end of this webinar, we'll have a special invitation for you in terms of how to work with us going forward if you want to get started right away with a Bitcoin investment. Whether you take us up on that invitation or not, this webinar will be of enormous value to you if you are at all considering this. So we're going to get started in just a second. If you hang out with us for the entire webinar, we'll also have a free gift for you at the end, a very exciting piece of software, the Bitcoin Investment Plan software, and we'll have the link for you toward the end of the webinar. We thought it would be helpful for you to know a little bit about us since we're here giving you this information. My name's Tom Kornblue. You can see me on the left there. I've started my career as an engineer and have been involved in tech businesses for most of the last 25 years or so. I've been a business consultant to venture capital companies, lots of different firms. I've been a long-term investor in lots of different vehicles. I'm a professor at Georgetown, teach organization development. I've been doing that for many years. And I got obsessed with Bitcoin about 3 years ago, and I'm still obsessed for many reasons.
To say the least, that's for certain. I remember when you started talking to me about this 3 years ago, and I was like, what is he talking about? But yeah, Tom's been on this for a long time. And my name's Tom Stein, and I've been an investor for at least 30 years now. I've invested in stocks, bonds, commodities, specifically precious metals, foreign currencies, you've named it. I've done some trading along the way, and I'm also a big gold bug. I'm fascinated by gold, currency, money, everything to do with how we exchange and store value. So I'm bringing some of that, plus my background as an educator, to this Bitcoin thing that my friend Tom's been talking to me about forever. I'm what you would call an early adopter. I got in on Bitcoin not way in the distant past, but long enough ago that I've made some nice returns, and I'm excited to see what's coming next.
Yeah, so Bitcoin is an exciting adventure from an investment point of view and from a technology point of view, and we want to show you why. So in order to address the promises that we made to you and give you the value that we promised, we need to tell you a little bit about Bitcoin. Just to let you know, we're not going to get into the technical side of Bitcoin. We just want you to have enough information to know, is this going to be an investment that makes sense for me? But the first thing you need to understand is that Bitcoin, when we talk about Bitcoin, we're talking about two things, and most people really don't understand this. First, there's Bitcoin with a big B, which is the network. This is the distributed, trustless value exchange network that runs on the internet. Many people think of this as the next layer of the internet to exchange value, whereby the internet was just exchanging information. And this Bitcoin network is secure. It's a massive computer network distributed across the globe and is secured by massive computer power, keeping it safe. That's really the most important part of the Bitcoin investment story.
That computer network's amazing, Tom. Absolutely incredible. It has so much power. What it's more than the top 500 supercomputers combined. That's just really fascinating to me. Amazing, amazing technology. But then there's also the little b Bitcoin, which is the currency unit. So when somebody talks about the price of Bitcoin, that's what they're talking about. Bitcoin with a little b. It's like dollar bills, pennies, euros, yen, yuan, and on and on. It's just it's typical currency that you might work with or use. But it's really important to understand that there are two parts to this, and the part that's exciting from an investment standpoint and potentially lucrative is the network. That's where the value is. It's an incredible value too, and it just keeps getting larger and stronger as time goes on.
So there's a lot more that you can find out about Bitcoin. You can do your own research around it. We're not going to go into that. But there are a few characteristics of Bitcoin, both the network and Bitcoin, the currency, that we want to highlight because it adds to the value proposition. And the first is that it's a global, decentralized bookkeeping, basically ledger system that tracks every transaction that's happening. And anybody can use it across the world for free.
There's also no controls or limitations to Bitcoin. No government controls it, no corporation controls it, no individual owns it. It's completely decentralized, it's completely open, it's completely lacking any individual's control, which gives it a lot more security, flexibility, and potential.
And it also means that you can, at your own will, send value exchange with anyone else without anyone controlling it.
Yes, very important. It's also inflation-proof. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. The number of Bitcoin grows very slowly until it hits that maximum, so it doesn't have the inherent inflation that most people are familiar with. There'll be no Zimbabwe's or Germany's in the 1920s with Bitcoin. Never going to happen.
As we said, the network itself is extremely secure. And this security has encryption technology, bank level, very high bank level encryption technology that makes sure it's absolutely safe. Bitcoin network has never been hacked. The network has been attacked. People have tried to disrupt it many times, but over the last 5 years have not even come close.
It's also very flexible, fast, and very inexpensive. So you can use Bitcoin for virtually nothing. There's very, very tiny transaction costs built in, but you can use it to buy something as large as a house, you can buy a yacht, you can buy a piece of candy. So it's very flexible in terms of what you can buy with it and how you can use it, which gives it, again, incredible value.
So we want to now start making the case. I think you can see why Bitcoin might have value. So we want to flesh that out and bring some legitimacy to it. And one of the folks that we really admire and has seen the potential of Bitcoin and talks about it quite a lot is a name named Marc Andreessen.
Mark was the founder of Netscape way back in the early days of the internet when he developed the Mosaic browser at the University of Illinois and then took it into the private world and gave us the Netscape browser and the browser wars, etc. This guy is he is responsible for giving us much of our access to the World Wide Web. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have it.
So
Very
this is
important person.
Right. So this is somebody who knows what great tech innovations look like in their early phases.
Yep.
And what Mark has said and continued to say really recently is that he hasn't seen anything like Bitcoin since the early days of the internet in terms of its potential to really transform the world and the environment we live in, particularly the financial industry.
Yeah, he thinks it has the potential to disrupt the financial industry, which is an exciting thing in one sense. It'll really stand things on their head, which is truly amazing, Tom. Absolutely incredible.
And of course, it's not just Mark. It's many other technologically savvy folks who are looking at this and seeing, hey, this is more than just an innovation. This is something truly transformational. Even Bill Gates has that sense. And a guy named Barry Silbert, who runs Second Market, which is a hedge fund and tech investment operation, he sees that there's lots of Wall Street money about to come into the Bitcoin market. Wall Street banks starting to trade Bitcoin, starting to invest in Bitcoin, starting to create investment products for Bitcoin. So there's a lot of people, not everybody, of course, there's lots of doubters as well, but there are many people that we respect deeply who are seeing enormous potential here, and we want to show you a little bit why so you can understand their thinking.
Yes, they're very tech-savvy people. They know what's going on.
So there are going to be many opportunities for Bitcoin to disrupt the financial world and many applications to come. But initially, the first three disruptions that are quite apparent, or at least potentially on the horizon, is first, store of value, of which gold is one of the primary stores of value in the world today. That's about a $9 trillion business, as it were. There's global currency, which is e-commerce. That's about a $1 trillion per year exchange. And there's the global transaction network, which is how people send money back and forth to each other. This is the global remittance market, and that's about a $500 billion market. All of these areas, and many more, even if Bitcoin takes a small percentage of these opportunities, it means tremendous success for the Bitcoin network and the protocol.
And the amazing thing, Tom, is Bitcoin actually is applicable to all of these, which is not true of any one thing that we're looking at. Gold can't do these things by itself, but Bitcoin can, which is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
Exactly. You know, and it's not just these folks. We just wanted to give you another sense. There's a guy named Bill Miller, who's the chairman, chief investment officer at Legg Mason Capital Management, another investment firm, hedge fund. And his take, and this is really at the core of how we like to think of this as an investment, is that even if Bitcoin just took 10% of gold's utility as a store of value, that would be just that by itself, just one factor, would be an $800 billion market value for Bitcoin. So as he says, and the way we think about it, yeah, you could lose if Bitcoin completely fails, you could lose 100% of your money, or you could make 120 times your investment in just a couple of years. That's what the potential is.
Yes, that's what we call the reward to risk ratio, and that one is really, really awesome.
So you are starting to get a sense, I'm sure, of the potential that we see. But in order to really understand how Bitcoin should be considered as a technology investment, it's really important to understand what technology adoption and technology investments have looked like in the past and what we can expect from Bitcoin. So grab your pens and pencils, pay attention. We're going to dive in here to some pretty important concepts that will really help you make a wise decision. So when a new technology comes onto the scene, and Bitcoin, the best way to think about Bitcoin is to think about it as a technology, there's a very predictable life cycle of the adoption of that technology. That is the use of that technology. And as you can see from this chart, early on the left side, when the technology first gets started, initially very few people start using it, just the innovators. As the technology becomes more advanced and develops utility, people start understanding, oh, here's what I can do with it, you begin to get the early adopters. And that's still a relatively small percentage of people, but more and more people begin to get the sense of, hey, there's some value here. Eventually, the technology matures enough till you get to an early majority, and that's when you really begin to see the growth and potential of the technology. Now, of course, most people did not see this technology and the value of it early on during the visionary innovator period.
Right. Most people don't actually get on board. As you're seeing from this graph, most people aren't going to get on board till after over 50% of the until 50% have actually gone through those early stages. That's when the rest are going to pile on, is toward the end. So a lot of the growth occurs when? At the beginning. That's when the potential for great profit and great potential exists.
Of course, that's when there's the highest risk as well.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's the whole investing game in technology. And we're going to give you some data and evidence as to why we think the potential is very high for the Bitcoin protocol. So this is just another slice at the same graph, and it just shows, this is, for example, in the social media space, that different technologies are at different phases of the adoption curve. And you'll see the same pattern, but as you'll notice, the highest profit opportunity is just as we're beginning to move into the early adopter phase, through the beginning of the early majority phase. That make sense, Tom?
Perfectly. It's just such an amazing thing that, it's amazing to think of how many people still aren't using email. There's still some people that aren't actually using email, or, the kind of things that have become almost taken for granted by those of us who enjoy technology.
Right.
But yeah, you can see where these technologies are right now in terms of adoption.
Okay, great. So just to show you what this has looked like historically, and I don't want to add too much complexity, but I think this is very interesting to us to see that if you look at this over time, the early technologies that came onto the scene, for instance, the telephone and radio and color TV, you can see those early, the ones further to the left, is that their adoption rates happened over, let's say, 20, 30, 40 years before they were fully adopted. As we get to more modern technologies like computers and the internet, the cell phone, these adoptions are happening within 5 or 10 years to almost full adoption. And so that's as we're seeing these technologies being adopted much more rapidly, that's what we can expect with technologies that are now coming online, like Bitcoin.
Yes, the acceleration of tech adoption is just remarkable, absolutely remarkable. I mean, just those of you, if you're over the age of 20 listening to this, you've already seen this happen in your lifetime. I mean, it's just incredible.
It's exactly right, Tom. And we hardly even think about it because this becomes so second nature. We'll see something like Facebook go from 0 to massive adoption in just a few years.
Whereas when Tom and I were kids, I mean, think about, we're kids, we were teenagers and in our 20s, VCRs. I mean, how long did it take for our parents to get VCRs?
That's video cassette recorders, for those of
you who don't know what that is.
Right, exactly.
Awesome.
So just to give you another example, to give a close-up, if you look at smartphone adoption, if you can read this chart, smartphone, we had the early innovator phase in, let's say, 2005, and we're already into the late majority phase by 2014.
That's absolutely amazing.
Right, and that's happened with very complex technology that's in the smartphones. Most of you who are watching this right now have a smartphone.
Yeah.
Or you've got someone around you who's got a smartphone at the worst case. So you get the idea. Tech adoption, there's very predictable patterns, and they're happening faster and faster. So Mark Andreessen said that what he sees, that Bitcoin is just like the internet is at the same stage the internet was in 1982. Well, in 1982, there was no World Wide Web yet. We had just registered the first .com domain name, and we had just identified the Internet Protocol Suite, which was TCP/IP. You don't need to know that, but this is the underlying software, the underlying program that runs at the base of the Internet. around which everything else, all that we know of the internet, has been built on top of.
And this is a full decade before anybody started using this thing in any meaningful way. Prior to web browsers, prior to the dot-com boom, we're talking a decade before. That's what Marc Andreessen thinks is happening right now with Bitcoin. We're at this level, not even the dot-com boom, which is a full 15 years in the future. That's just incredible.
Right. Now our sense is, and we'll show you the data in just a sec, that the Bitcoin adoption is happening even faster than what happened with the internet because we have the internet to build on top of.
Yeah, the internet has really changed the game, has it not?
Right, exactly. But here's the thing. At this point in 1982, even in 1992, almost all observers really didn't see how big the internet was going to come and what the impact was going to be.
Yep.
Most people really didn't see it. And at that time, and here's a big piece, is that there was no way, even if you saw what was coming, there was no way to invest in the internet itself because it wasn't owned by anything. It wasn't a company.
In 1982, there was nothing.
Right.
Clear up until the early 90s, there was nothing. There was nothing to get your hands on. Nope.
So we just thought it would be fun to show you. In 1993, a full 10 years after the initial protocol for the internet was developed, this is what the web looked like. This was an example of the Mosaic browser that
Marc Andreessen, yep.
that Marc Andreessen was part of creating. Exactly. So it's a pretty sparse visual interface, I'd say. And even Bill Gates at this time, this is 1993, Bill Gates, even, he doesn't like to admit where he was wrong, but he even didn't see what the potential would be. They understood there was going to be some value to this interconnected internet, but even Bill Gates didn't understand what the full implications were going to be.
No, I think I read somewhere that he said at some point, like, everything connected with the internet is their biggest regret because they just blew it. They blew it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Didn't see it coming.
Yeah. So, none of them saw this. Most people didn't see this coming, but the children of the internet, in terms of the applications that have been built on top of that underlying protocol, are just enormous. And here we just have a list of some of them that all of us are familiar with. And I don't have
Email, for God's sake. I mean, unbelievable. In 1993, who were you going to send an email to? Nobody.
Exactly.
Unbelievable, Tom.
Right, so the reason we're showing you this is just to get a sense of where Bitcoin is in terms of a fundamental change in technology, but the powerful, user-friendly applications of the technology have not yet come online. That's where we are now in terms of the Bitcoin the Bitcoin network as an investment, as a protocol. So there's so much more to come, potentially. Of course, we don't know for sure. That's why it's a speculative investment. But the potential is enormous.
Enormous.
Right. So here's the question. We're making the case, and Marc Andreessen and many others make the case, that the internet in 1982 and the web in 1983 are comparable to the Bitcoin network in 2014. If that's the case, then making a small investment in the Bitcoin network at this point might make a lot of sense.
And what's really remarkable, Tom, is if this is true, which we think it is, and the technology adoption curve is accelerated like it isn't going to take 2 decades to really see that growth like it did with the internet and the World Wide Web. We don't have to wait until 1999 to see the peak of the dot-com boom. The Bitcoin boom is probably going to be peaking much, much quicker.
Exactly, and we're going to get to what that might look like in the time frames in just a second. So basically, here's some more evidence that something big is really happening. First of all, we're seeing daily articles in mainstream media. Government regulation and taxation is happening all over the world. Germany has recognized Bitcoin as private money. IRS recognizes Bitcoin as property. Bank of America has done a report on it. Goldman Sachs is paying attention. Wells Fargo. Big players are paying attention. This is
if Goldman's paying attention, it's meaningful.
Right. So
they won't miss out.
And here's even some other things just to keep in mind, and you can see why we are so excited about this, and those of us who have been paying attention to this for some time are excited. Right now, already, the Bitcoin economy is close to $7 billion. That's amazing. In the last 12 months, about $200 million of venture capital funding has come into Bitcoin startups, right?
Wow.
There is already a Bitcoin investment trust if you want to invest in Bitcoin without actually owning Bitcoin. But of course, you have to be a, what is it called, Tom? A qualified
an accredited investor.
Right. You need to be an accredited investor, which means you probably have to have a net worth of about $1 million, right?
Yep, million plus.
Which knocks most people out of the ballpark, and that's why we're doing this webinar. We want you to be able to invest in this along with the big boys.
Right, because you don't need this. That's not essential to invest in Bitcoin at all.
Right, exactly. But just to let you know, the big boys are investing in Bitcoin. In fact, the Bitcoin Investment Trust already owns $50 million worth of Bitcoins. Not a small amount.
That ain't chump change.
Right. Later this year, there's an exchange-traded fund coming online, probably in late 2014. And we're seeing, here are some of the fundamental things we're seeing, is that there's been, over the last couple of years, an exponential rise. That means faster and faster each year. Rise in the number of international conferences and their attendance. We've seen an exponential rise in the number of developers working on the Bitcoin protocol and on the Bitcoin spin-offs and applications. And we've seen an exponential rise in the number of users. Even with all the difficulties you've read about and all the challenges and all of the, which we'll talk about in just a moment, even with all that, there's still been this exponential steady rise of users over the last couple of years.
So, Tom, are you seeing the great wave yet?
Well, I'm seeing it, Tom. Sometimes it gets obscured by the chaos of the moment, but yes.
There's a wave.
Exactly.
There is a wave.
Right. There's a great wave, and it's not just the outsiders who are seeing it now. Big money investors are beginning to see it and seeing it as a viable opportunity.
Hey, Tom, you probably get asked more questions than I do about Bitcoin, but I get asked questions. So let me toss a question at you, okay?
Yeah, and by the way, I'm really glad we're doing this because we do get these questions. We've been sharing this with our friends and family and people who want to know about Bitcoin, and we get these questions all the time. So
yeah, so the one question I hear more than anything else is, won't the government shut this down? I mean, isn't this like an attack on the government's bread and butter? Isn't the U.S. government going to shut this down somehow?
Well, we don't know for sure. Of course, there's nothing guaranteed. But the only way that you could shut down Bitcoin, truthfully, is to shut down the internet.
Whoa.
Because Bitcoin is distributed equally across the entire world.
Right.
You would have to shut down every aspect of the internet around the world to actually kill Bitcoin.
You'd have to kill every node. That would be impossible.
Right, exactly. And you can see what happened when you try and do that in a small place. If one country, for example, tried to shut down Bitcoin, like, for example, right now in Turkey, they tried to shut down Twitter. It's a perfect example. And what happened was Twitter usage skyrocketed, went up even higher. People found ways around the shutdown.
Right.
Very likely, Bitcoin would be in the same category. Now, of course, if the U.S. government or a government where you're living made it very difficult to exchange Bitcoins with the currency of the country, that could be a challenge within that country to utilize Bitcoin. But will it threaten Bitcoin itself? No.
No.
That's one of the real secrets here.
And what we're seeing more than anything else, really, is a sense that I think people high up and knowledgeable enough in various governments are catching on to that simple fact. So now it's becoming more of a, we need a little bit of control because we can't really control it. So there's now, more talk about regulation and things like that, which may or may not work, but at least they're recognizing that their potential to really do harm to the Bitcoin network is pretty limited. As a matter of fact, almost zero.
And that seems to be what happens in one form or another. Governments are saying we're going to have to figure out a way to live with this and adapt to it, as opposed to try and ignore it and shut it down. That's pretty much what's happening.
Yep.
So before we go on, Tom, and really get to, and just to let you know where we're headed next, is how big is the potential and how fast is it going to happen. The other question that I get, because people read the newspapers, and what shows up in the newspapers and on the web is people hear a lot about the hacking and the stealing and the theft of Bitcoins and the collapse of some of the exchanges. Now, I just want to say none of that has affected or even threatened the Bitcoin network itself. The Bitcoin network has been secure, stable, and completely solid for the last 4 years.
Yes.
What you are seeing is you're seeing some very, let's call them very underdeveloped applications, technologies, and exchanges that use Bitcoin. They're in their early stage of the development of the technologies, and so they're very insecure and not done very well, just to put it very simply. And you're seeing the collapse and the attack on those very insecure application technologies.
In other words, the low-hanging fruit's getting picked.
Exactly. And what we're going to see in the next year, very soon actually, is much more secure Bitcoin companies, much more secure technologies around the Bitcoin network. So we're not concerned about the security of Bitcoin itself, and that's an important distinction.
Yes, it is.
So let's move on. The big question is, okay, how is this going to help you, what we've told you about? We already told you we think it's not too late, and we believe actually it's an ideal time to get involved in Bitcoin.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great time.
And that's because if you look at the chart, we've explained the adoption curve. If you look at where we are, here's where we are.
Very early.
Right. It's very early. The big gains, the big opportunity is still yet to come. I know it's hard to believe given the returns that we've seen so far, but that's what it looks like in terms of the technology adoption curve. So Bitcoin is a unique investment. It's an incredible opportunity with a very high potential reward and, of course, a high risk. But this time, unlike the internet, there's actually a way to invest directly into the network.
Which is very exciting. Because now you have the potential to be equal to venture capital investors. This is not a situation where you're going to get to invest in Bitcoin way down the road after the big boys have played around. No, not the case at all. We are in a pre-initial public offering stage. We're pre-ETFs. We're pre-everything. We're at the very beginning, and there's such a simple, easy way for you to participate. Just buy some Bitcoin. It's so obvious and simple. It's amazing, really. It's just better than any investment I've run across in 30 years. Way better.
In some ways, it's what's going on right now. Many people have likened to a land grab. Back in the Wild West of the U.S.
When they sat on the border of Oklahoma and they fired a gun and off the people rode in their horses and wagons to get a piece of land.
What can I stake out a claim? Because right now, if you own a Bitcoin, you own even a part of a Bitcoin, in effect, you're actually owning a piece of the network.
Yeah.
And as the network grows in value, that piece of the network would grow in value as well. That's one way to think about this investment.
Never forget that point, because you're not just buying the little b currency. You're buying into the network, and that's where the value is. That's so important.
So, as you've probably heard, the price of a Bitcoin, that is how people are valuing Bitcoin, has been wildly volatile. That means it goes up, and it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. And if you look at the current chart, when we're creating this webinar, we're at a low after a huge run up to about $1,200, and we're back down to about $450, something like that, as we're creating this webinar. But you'll also see that previous to this, there was another bubble that came back to a low point and then exploded again. And that's the cycle that we've been seeing in Bitcoin for the last 3 to 4 years, which is very explosive bubbles and then a return not to where it was before, but to much higher than it was before.
Yep, it's been pretty consistently doing that behavior.
Right, and so we don't know if it'll continue this way, but that's what all the fundamental underlying patterns seem to suggest. If you look at the same chart, but this is on a log chart, which makes it makes it a proportional. It shows you how the price is gaining in a proportional basis. Basically, we're seeing a pretty steady climb up, and each of the bubbles or each of the cycles,
the booms and busts, the cycles,
exactly, booms and bust cycles are still rising dramatically and quickly. And here's the exciting thing, is that if we look at the Bitcoin adoption curve and we look at where we expect Bitcoin to be following that kind of adoption curve, it so happens that Bitcoin price is actually following this adoption curve almost exactly. And so
wow.
In order to show you that, I'm going to put a log chart, just like what I just showed you, and put it with the current Bitcoin price. And so this is a log chart of the current Bitcoin price tracked against what we would expect the Bitcoin adoption trend to be. And you can see there's a very close correlation between current price, which is in blue, and the Bitcoin adoption trend that would be predicted based on our understanding of how technology is adopted. That make sense, Tom?
Absolutely. It's such a remarkable thing. I don't know how many times I've seen this chart, and it's so wild to see the price hugging that trend line. Just amazing.
Yeah. When things get very crazy in the Bitcoin markets, it's very comforting to come back to the long-term big picture. What's the big story here that's happening?
And just to point out again,
sure,
as you've said several times, this is a log chart, which means if you look at the right hand side, you see that those prices are not going up 10, 20, 30, 40. They're going 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. I mean, this is the way to see exponential growth, and Bitcoin is tracking that to a T.
So far, that's right.
So far,
and
knock on wood.
So if Bitcoin continues this trajectory, and of course there's no guarantee that it will, but if it does, what we're seeing is that by the end of this year, 2014, we'd likely see a price somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $6,000 for one Bitcoin. And by the end of 2015, we're looking at a price close to $30,000 to $40,000 for a Bitcoin. Now, that may seem completely impossible or insane to you listening to this, and sometimes it does to us as well, but this is what great technology transformations look like.
Yes.
And Bitcoin so far is following that trajectory.
This is why Larry Page and Sergey Brin are worth $16 billion each. Those would be the founders of Google.
Exactly.
It's precisely why. That's how it happens, folks.
Yeah. Now, we'll just say it again. We don't know. We have no more information than, we just have the same information that everyone else does. So we don't know for sure if that's what's going to be happening. But all of the fundamental factors, the adoption is occurring on schedule from what we can tell. And by the way, this is not the only tracking of this particular trend. If we look at a very similar trend line on a log chart, this is tracking the actual price of Bitcoin, and this is a linear regression model, which is the red trend, and this shows pretty much, and this is derived in a different way, so it's coming at it from another side. You don't have to understand this completely, but what it says is basically this is a confirmation, another way of saying that the same trend line seems to be in effect, again showing us by the end of 2014 at a price of about $6,000 to $7,000 for one Bitcoin. So you can see why we are so excited about this, both from a technological breakthrough opportunity side, because I just love the technology and what its possibility is, but also from a financial investment point of view.
Yes.
So before we go on, we want to show you a little bit about how you can invest in this and how to do this in a way that's most likely to be successful. We just thought we'd address a couple of other questions that might be on your mind that we've been hearing from other people. So what else we got, Tom?
Well, another a question that really fits from all those charts, Tom, is can this keep going up exponentially forever? I mean, can it keep going up forever? And the
Right.
answer is pretty obvious. I think no, it can't keep going up forever. That's not going to happen. But it it does what we're seeing because of the stage we're at in the growth. We're at such an early stage, and because it is exponential growth, we've got a couple years of some seriously amazing, astounding, you could even say, growth potential. That exponential growth will hang in there for a while. But eventually, at some point down the road, 2-3 years, it is going to level off. You can't have exponential growth forever. It's impossible. So,
Right.
yeah, it will at some point level off. But anytime soon, probably not. That's at least our best estimate of what's happening.
Yep. I'm glad you pointed that out, Tom. Uh, we don't know where that's going to level off and when Bitcoin will become a stable price. Could be, but we've got a few years yet before that is even in the ballpark. And we don't know what that's going to end up. It could end up at 10,000. Could it end up at 400? It could end up at 100,000. But
well,
yep. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say let's talk a little bit about how we're going to ride this wave. Okay.
Great. So, in order to successfully invest in something like Bitcoin, which is very volatile, very speculative, the number one piece of advice
is invest what you can afford and only what you can afford.
Yep. And we're saying this because this is what we've seen in our own investing in the past, and even when we've helped other people to invest in Bitcoin, when they invest too much, more than they really can afford to lose, they get scared and they stop sleeping and they are not able to hold on to the investment. So truthfully, the first piece of advice is not just what we should be saying, but we know you won't be able to actually hold on to the investment long enough to see the return unless you invest a small enough amount that you can risk losing it all. Does that make sense,
Yes.
Tom?
Absolutely. So if that number for you is $100, then so be it. And we're not talking tens of thousands here. I mean, we're talking the growth potential is so enormous it doesn't have to be a large amount. But only invest what you legitimately and actually can afford to see go to zero. We don't think it will, but at the same time, that's what the risk side of the equation is about. So how to ride the wave, Tom? We've come up with 3 proven investment strategies which should help our viewers to ride this wave.
And today, on this webinar, we're just going to explain one of them. That's all we have time for, which is we want to show you the zero risk doubling strategy. And the idea of these strategies is to minimize your risk as much as possible while maximizing your return as much as possible. And this, again, which is what most people don't do. So let's walk them through the zero risk doubling strategy, Tom.
You got it. It's very simple, folks. Very, very simple. So let's say you've got a $1,000 investment and you buy into Bitcoin when it's $500 per Bitcoin, BTC. So you're going to end up buying 2 Bitcoin, right? $1,000, 500 per Bitcoin, 2 Bitcoin. When one Bitcoin doubles in value, when it goes from $500 per Bitcoin to $1,000, you sell half. In other words, you're going to sell 1 Bitcoin. You had 2, you sell 1. What happens at this point is very cool. You now have your entire $1,000 investment back in your pocket. You actually still own 1 Bitcoin. You have all your money back, and now it's a free ride. You have no further risk. You can't lose any more money. You're just going to sit back and see what happens to your 1 Bitcoin. Might end up being worth 1,000, stay 1,000. It might go to 10. Who knows where it's going to go? But you now don't have to worry about your money at all because you just got your investment back. Great system, and a lot of traders do something very similar to this. When you get a double, yank out half your money. Then you can ride for free.
Yep, it's a very simple idea, but both Tom and I, it took us many years of investing to actually do this and use this in a successful way. Because you're always trying to second guess yourself, and you're always trying to do better.
Plan. You got to have a plan.
Right. And this is a great strategy, particularly with something as volatile, and there's almost nothing as volatile as Bitcoin. And it's not going to get any less volatile in the next couple of years. So
No.
in order to ride something like this, you really need to get your risk down to zero as quickly as possible.
And this does it.
And this is what it does. Okay. So you've stayed with us this far on this webinar, which means at this point you're probably seeing very much the same situation that we're seeing. And that's a really good thing, because if you look at what Bitcoin is going to be doing, likely in the next, we don't know for sure, but likely in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, the potential is absolutely incredible. And just to summarize what that looks like, Tom, we're looking at, on the average, over the last 4 years, Bitcoin's price has increased about, sometimes more, sometimes a little less, but about 10 times each year. That means that if you invest $1,000 right now, next year that could be worth, we don't know for sure, of course, but that could be worth $10,000, right?
That's absolutely phenomenal, Tom. That kind of returns. I've only seen a few things in my lifetime that have even approached that kind of returns, and that would have been the luck of the draw during the dot-com boom.
Right.
But other than that, this is just almost astounding.
Right. Well, it's definitely astounding, almost incredible. So given that, and since you're on this webinar and you've been with us, you've seen the case we've made for this, let's just assume, for argument's sake, that Bitcoin's trend does continue for the next few years. That means that whatever you invest today could be worth in a couple of years 100 times that investment. Again, just blows our mind, blows us out of the water. It seems impossible, of course, but that's what people said 3 years ago. That's what people said 2 years ago. So just for argument's sake and to play it out for yourself, just pick a number. Whatever you think would be a reasonable investment for you to make at this particular time. Could be $100, could be $500, even $1,000. And then take a look at that, write that down on a piece of paper or on your notepad, and then add 2 zeros to it. That's what you could be looking at 2 to 3 years from now if Bitcoin plays out its potential.
That's worth the risk, at least to me.
Right, and that's exactly right, Tom. That's the case we're making here. Of course, no one knows for sure if that's what's going to happen to Bitcoin, but the chances are looking better and better all the time. This is a serious possibility, and all that you can lose is your full investment. Worst case scenario, you lose everything, but the possibility is in a couple of years you've made 100 times return. That kind of ratio is just unheard of.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
But here's the problem, and I think you all understand this. When most people hear about Bitcoin, and this we've watched many people come into the Bitcoin world, friends of ours, colleagues, I've been in touch with hundreds of people over the last few years. Here's what the normal stages that they go through when they first hear about Bitcoin. And you are falling in this category. If you're a normal person, here's what's likely going to happen. You're going to hear about Bitcoin, and you'll say, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then you'll kind of pay attention a little bit peripherally on the side. And then about 6 months later, you'll actually say, boy, this is still here. This is something big. I really need to do some serious research about what is this and what's the potential, and begin to understand it. And likely what happens after that first research, you go, oh, this is something serious. I should really pay attention. It often takes, and most times as Tom and I have watched this, it takes at least another 6 months beyond that before someone actually says, okay, I'm going to get out there and actually take the risk and buy my first Bitcoin or my first tenth of a Bitcoin, whatever that is. And then, even after someone has done that, it's often a whole year after that before they actually say, you know what, I now trust Bitcoin enough that I'm going to actually get serious and put in some substantial investment, whatever that is. So that's what we see happen again and again.
You know, Tom, I actually know of a real-world instance of this happening. I mean, something very similar. Not quite your numbers here, but pretty darn close. I know this guy named Tom, whose buddy Tom Kornblue was talking about Bitcoin 3 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And Tom, that would be me, went through something very similar to this. I heard about it.
Right.
Maybe I ought to look into this.
Right.
Finally, buy a Bitcoin. Buy some more Bitcoin. If I had taken my original investment in Bitcoin and jumped on it when you first started talking about it, I would not be sitting here right now.
Right.
I would probably be sitting in some very luxurious place somewhere in the world. It would have, the returns would have been absolutely astronomical.
Right.
It would have been, because I put in a pretty good investment.
Yep.
And, I've been in it for a while, but my God, had I done that when you first started talking about it? Unreal. Absolutely unreal.
And this is Tom Stein, my buddy Tom Stein, friend and colleague for years, who is a sophisticated investor,
right.
Understands how to value investments, is very comfortable with money, knows how to, put a portfolio together. And so
I trust you.
And he heard this from somebody he trusts and respects.
I had a trusted source, exactly.
Right. And even then, the reason we're telling you this is that even then, it took him quite a long time before he could make his investment.
Yep.
And
exactly.
Truthfully, that's how it works for most people. I've, spoken to many people, as I've said, about Bitcoin, friends and colleagues. I've seen through my network hundreds of people go through this process, and almost always it takes quite a while for them to get up the confidence and courage to actually make this investment.
And there's a problem with this.
There's a big problem with that. Exactly.
There's a huge problem because we're far enough along in the adoption curve that, as someone asked, can this go on forever? No.
Right.
No.
And so the fact is that Bitcoin is moving very quickly, and whereas a couple of years ago you had the time to get into this at your own pace comfortably and kind of learn on your own and take your time.
Because who knew if anything was going to happen? It was so iffy back then.
But now we're getting to the point where we may only have 1, 2, perhaps 3 more years of this kind of growth. And if you give up 1 year of that growth, that means you may only have a 10 times return as opposed to 100 times return. That's a huge difference that you're giving up. And our guess is, and you saw the chart that we were looking at, our guess is that Bitcoin will probably, although we can't be sure, never absolutely sure about this, it's very likely Bitcoin within the next 3 to 4 months is going to make a very significant move to a much higher level, which will take even more of your profit off of the table.
Because there is some pretty large money on the edge
right
now, looking seriously, because Wall Street's getting on board, and it's getting on board faster than I think you even believed, right, Tom?
Oh,
it's happening.
Yes,
it's happening in a big way.
Right, much faster than any of us thought would happen.
Right.
And so Tom and I thought about this a lot, and we said, well, how can we help people get up to speed much more quickly? How can we get people more confident, more ready to make an investment sooner rather than later? Because truthfully, you don't really have the time to wait. You got to make a decision now. And this is not urgency coming from Tom and myself. This is coming from what we see in the Bitcoin environment.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think somebody has the 2 years that I sat around and waited. No,
right.
You don't have that luxury. No way.
And so what we've done is we've put together a program, a course, a video-based course that will take you as quickly as possible from knowing nothing to being a very confident, secure Bitcoin investor and doing it in a very safe way. We're trying to speed up that whole education process, that whole adoption process, so you can take full advantage of the growth that Bitcoin is likely to achieve in the next couple of months. So here's what we put together for you.
This is our Bitcoin investment plan fast track. This plan is a more than 3 hour video training that we've put together. It gives you step by step instruction in how to be a knowledgeable, confident, and safe Bitcoin investor, because that's really important. We want you to have the confidence and experience the safety that comes from some good knowledge and some good education about the Bitcoin world. We're going to provide you with tools that you can use, checklists, and also software that will be very valuable to you in putting together what we think is an extremely important aspect of this, which is your own personal investment plan. It's the thing missing so much from investing. People have no plan whatsoever. They just buy whatever comes along. No, you've got to have a plan. So we're going to show you how you put that together, and we're going to give you proven investment strategies that will provide you with a really clear understanding of what you're going to do with your investment as Bitcoin goes further down the road.
So what we've done, I'll just kind of dive in there, Tom,
sure,
is at each step of the process, we're giving you very specific action steps to take before moving on to the next module, to the next piece of the course. And we'll talk about what that looks like in just a second. And so here's what's in the program specifically. Let's talk you through exactly what you're going to get in each of the modules so you understand what we're going to bring to the table here. So in the first module, we're going to go very carefully over how to buy and use Bitcoin safely. Now, in the future, this won't be a real issue. It'll be really a no-brainer to use Bitcoin. But right now, in this early adopter phase, you really need to know how to do it. So we're going to have 7 lessons for successful Bitcoin investment. We're going to show you which exchanges and services are safe to use. And we're going to show you how to register for those exchanges and send money safely. And of course, before that module is over, we'll have you planning how to buy your first Bitcoin. And then you'll get specific action steps, and then you'll move into module number 2.
And in module 2, we're going to talk a lot about how to secure your Bitcoin investment. This brings you into the world of Bitcoin wallets, their security, their safety, how to use them, etc. We're also going to talk about how to safely store your Bitcoin for the long haul. And then finally, we'll give you some clear step-by-step instructions on how you send Bitcoin to someone else or a company, how you receive Bitcoin, and also how you can even spend Bitcoin. And instead of just exchanging it for cash, you can actually, or dollars or euros or whatever, you can actually spend your Bitcoin on anything from luxury items to simple things. So you can do quite a bit with Bitcoin. And again, as Tom's pointed out, you'll have specific action steps and step-by-step instructions so you know how to move forward and implement securing your investment.
And then in Module 3, which in some ways is the heart of the whole investment plan fast track system, in this module we'll show you exactly, as Tom said, how to plan and implement your investment strategy that's customized for your specific situation. That means determining your risk amount, selecting the right investment strategy for your situation. We'll show you how to use the investment plan software that we've included, which gives you lots of options about how to set up your plan, and you can customize it completely, basically infinitely, for how you want to run your strategy over the next 3 to 4 years.
And then Module 4 will show you how to manage your investment. Now, this is important with Bitcoin. This is not something that you just put a little money in and stick it in the drawer. You've got to stay on top of the news, stay on top of the statistics to ensure that your investment stays on track, and we'll show you some ways to do that. We're also going to show you how to assess the underlying health of your Bitcoin investment. That'll help you to have an understanding of Bitcoin being on track, whether it's doing what it should be doing or not. And how to find the best applications, tools, smartphone apps, you name it, that you can use to manage your investment and keep track of how things are going.
Right, and we've actually included actual directory PDF files for you that have what we consider right now the best apps and tools, and we'll include that in the whole package. So, to summarize what we're putting together here, you get instant access to our learning membership platform where you can go watch the videos. You'll have 4 instructional step-by-step video modules that will kind of walk you. We'll just take you in our hand and push it hand in hand. We'll walk down the road together. There'll be checklists, all the forms required. At the end of each module, you get an action plan. And we've also included MP3 audio files so you can listen to the content of this anywhere when you happen to be out and about, driving, etc. So that's the full plan. And in addition to that, Tom, you want to talk about the additional bonuses that we put together for you too?
Yes, we've got a few additional bonuses. We're going to be providing you with an advanced version of the Bitcoin investment software that we were discussing that gives you, as Tom was saying, you're going to have infinite customization of this software so that you can really, really hone in and fine-tune your investment plan to exactly what you need. And not to mention the fact that it's kind of fun to play with. But it's extremely useful. And then also, we want to provide you with a little support going down the road. It'd be real simple to just, say, here's a course, go take it, goodbye, see ya. But that's not what we're about. We want to actually, give you a little something as we're going, we go down for the next year or so that kind of what some of the things are going on in the Bitcoin world and have a little support. So we're going to be sending out 12 monthly email support updates. After you subscribe, you'll have access to that for 12 months. And
Right.
It will give you some additional support that should provide you with a little extra help in managing your Bitcoin investment.
Right, because frankly, Tom and I are on top of the Bitcoin world every day. I'm thinking about it, reading about it. And what we'll do is we'll highlight what's most important for you to know about the Bitcoin happenings and make sure that it's right at the top of your inbox and you can pay attention to it so you know how to respond with your investment. We've also included, because we thought it was absolutely essential for anything having to do with wealth or money, we've also included a video program on Practical Guide to Wealth Consciousness, which is really about how do you embody, think, and feel the qualities of wealth and success and facility with money that you need in order to hold on to your investment.
Yes, this is something very important to both Tom and I. It's been a topic of great interest for a long time, and it really is important, dare I say essential, to really work with your thoughts and your beliefs, etc., about how you see wealth and how you hold on to those ideas and help you to actually make the most of this Bitcoin investment. So I think it's something that you'll really enjoy, and we're going to toss that in as a special bonus.
Exactly. So to put everything together, all that we're putting on the table here, we really have put together everything we think you will need to really do this quickly, effectively, safely. So we're giving you a full video course with all the tools for $750 value. We're including the advanced investment software, which is $100 value, the 12 monthly updates, $200 value, the Wealth Consciousness video program, our special bonus, $200 value. And so the total value is $1,250 to get you immediately up to speed and being very effective, taking on the Bitcoin world as soon as possible. And today, as you're watching this, we're going to offer a very special fast action webinar special. That is only $397 for the entire package with all of the bonuses and all the extra resources if you order right now while you're on this webinar, while you're watching this.
Yes, we highly encourage you to get started now because I think we've made the case very thoroughly, this is the time. This is the time for Bitcoin. So if you'll click the Buy Now button below, you can have all the above for $397 and get started just as soon as you want to. You can start watching it in 10 minutes if that's good time for you.
Exactly. That's right, Tom. And we hope you'll take advantage of this. There's no risk to you, of course. If you're not absolutely thrilled with what we put together for you, you're welcome. Just let us know and we'll send you back whatever you've invested.
In our plan.
Exactly, in our plan. If you're interested in Bitcoin, we're quite confident that this is exactly what you need to get you from where you are to where you want to be.
Exactly.
So take action, get started right now. We'd love to see you on the other side. And thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Tom, for showing up.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, and thank you for watching, and I wish you the absolute best success and profitability as we go forward.
All right. Let's have some fun. Thank you.